Welcome back to the Flogsville podcast. It is week one of the finals. What a time of year it is. Hope you're glad you're joining us tonight. We've only got two coaches so far. We might get Tom drop in like last week, but coach of the Rabbitohs. Hello, Daniel. Welcome.
Hello, Scott. Fantastic to be here. Again, hope people are noting here after a loss, even after being eliminated. So, just that's fun for the listeners. But, great to be here, mate.
Very good to have you, mate. And coach of the Guns and Rosies, another coach that we'll get into this that unfortunately copped a loss on the weekend. Ben, hello, mate.
Good evening, mate. Yes, pleasure as always, win or loss. So hopefully on the other ledger this week, but remains to be seen.
Very good, boys. Well, let's get stuck into what was a pretty crazy round due to the Stephen Coniglio news on Saturday afternoon. And a few coaches already having to have traded Sean Darcy to Max Gawn, which sort of forced their hand a little bit. And then there was some coaches that were going to bring in Ryan Marshall, but Brett Ratton had other ideas and a little bit of hijinks there. So it was a bit of a chaotic round, but we saw some good scoring there. And in the end, I'm just going to call, I was very fortunate to be one of those coaches with Zach Merritt. Now, Rabs, this wasn't looking good at halftime, and then unbelievable second half from Merritt, earning my side just the top score this round.
Yes, I mean, it was. I'm sure we'll delve into it more when we do the individual matchups, but very unusual set of circumstances for Zach Merritt. I can't quite recall a two-half performance like what we saw in from his Sunday afternoon, but 37, I believe, Scott, is that correct? 37 at halftime.
At halftime.
And then finishing on 174. So that really says it all. There's not much more that needs to be added. So massive score. But very, very good performance though from your boys, Scott, which, as I said, we'll get back into more detail when we do the matchup. But just very solid performers all over the ground. Doing it without Marshall, who obviously, was a big scorer for a number of other teams. So yes, the Sarongs are generally around the mark at this time of season and pumping out a massive score when it counts.
Yeah, not much else to add. I think like Scotty nailed on the weekend. Making some nice moves and obviously the captain goes a long way. So really honest for another Penong member this week coming up against the Sarongs, which we will get into, but. Yeah, it looms as a potential assistant coach off in the prelim if it goes that way. So, who would have thought at the start of the year?
Yeah, a long way to go. We'll get stuck in, boys. We'll start with the first versus fourth matchup. The double chance, of course. The Guns and Rosies still scoring very well, Ben. Thanks to Zach Merritt and a couple others from your side. A very good score having to field Jai Cully, but I'm sure you'll get into that. But it was the sisterhoods with Ryan Marshall, really the point of difference here, boys. Talk us through this one. We'll start with you, Ben, I think.
Yeah, things are sitting reasonably comfortable after Friday night. Obviously, Brayshaw starting really well for us. Thinking I'd made, had three ruckmen to cover in Gawn, English and Marshall, and I covered two wrong ones. So in the end, when you saw the news that Tom Campbell was laid out on Sunday, it was that sinking feeling, Scotty. We've all been there as a bit of weight was coming and as he was rolling in the points. Topped off by Sam Walsh that night as well, in comparison to Jack McRae, who is obviously, been a bit of a nemesis to yourself and Ash this year, Scotty, but not this week. And in the end, effectively the difference between McRae and Walsh was the game, really. You mentioned Cully before, making a bit of a strategic decision to hold Cogs, thinking the difference between a Cameron and a Cully wouldn't be much more than 20 to 30 points. In the end, it was about 60 points, which, again, we went down by that much. So, obviously disappointing to lose. I think the last point of this matchup was a little bit of captaincy. Players such had the captaincy on Miller. Seeing that Ash and Alex were matching Miller, I needed to do something different and went Merritt. So that pulled off 50-odd points, but still not enough. And, through to the prelim for the Hoods and continue their hot streak of form.
Yes, yeah, massive result for the Hoods, and yeah, pretty interesting matchup though. As we said, like some players underperforming with Dacos and well, I know English is not actually a pod, but English on both sides underperforming. But yeah, just a really unique sort of one. Like Ryan Marshall's clearly had a massive impact on it, and coupled with Cully's 36, as we mentioned, is quite significant. But yeah, McRae, I think will come up in a couple of other matchups. A very reliable player. Very unusual to see him dip into the 70s. So that has hurt a few people this weekend.
Absolutely. And the Sisterhood's just going bang. And like we talked about, they're the form team, really. They have not lost in a very, very long time. So congratulations to them. They'll be enjoying the week off, I'm sure. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the week off. But we'll move on with our next matchup, boys. And this was an interesting matchup in terms of it was two really informed sides, but they both really struggled. And it was Sam getting the job done and going straight through to the prelim. Not by a lot, boys. Talk us through this one, please.
Yeah, I guess I'll start.
I was still just reading about the matchup, doing the research.
Yeah, you're right, Scotty. Some interesting things happening here. Obviously, Cornelio is the big one for Huey on Saturday afternoon. A little bit of wedding shopping, I believe, suit shopping for a wedding that he's in, and missed the announcement that Steve unfortunately quite sore, meaning that he obviously had to take Elijah's score on the bench, and yeah, when you go down by 53 points, it's a huge factor. So. Yeah, the last point there was on Sunday afternoon, thinking it was all dead and buried, and then his trade in Caneen Coleman had a 70-point first half comparison to Lockie Neal 36 or something, and had the match up in the ledger. But yeah, like Neal's done most of the year, he followed, finished off well and had a pretty comfortable win. So yeah, Sam, as he has all year, he just keeps getting it done and moves through the prelim, as you say, Scotty.
Yeah, I think a couple of things just to note on Hugh's side. Another player who'll probably come up in a few sides is Himmelberg with a bit of a role change on the weekend, which was definitely bad news for a number of coaches who had him. I think on Sam's side, you don't want to detract from someone who's just gone straight through to a prelim, but I think he would be realistic as well that he's still got some work to do with his side with blokes like O'Brien floating around the ruck, and even Tim Taranto, probably a little bit of a question mark with that 70. Seemed like he was hitting some form and obviously faded away a little bit. So still some work to be done for Sam, but he's put himself in a really strong position that he's given himself 2 weeks now, 4 trades to do something about it. So he'll be clearly around the mark now that he's in the prelim.
No, very good analysis, boys. And yeah, just Spike McVeigh, who knows with the Giants at the moment, just with Hopper back and Tom Green coming back. So it's a real mixed bag. They've sort of down tools, as it were. So it'll be interesting to see the motivation of a few players this week, but we'll get into that. Let's talk about our first elimination final. It's the Burtons who have been on a bit of a run, and definitely we've flagged this. We get a lot of things right on the podcast. And once again, we've got it right again with the Burtons winning and quite convincingly, boys, knocking out the Crouching Lions.
Yeah, well, I think on the Crouching Lions side, you talk about getting things right on the podcast, Scott. I think we've also been discussing this for a few weeks, that Brett's been a very strong side for a long time. He's still had a good season, but probably not quite to the same level this season as we've seen from him some other years. And it all just came to a bit of a head this weekend with, Jack Crisp as a pod was very unfortunate for him. A lot of people wouldn't have had that situation as a pod. Taranto, we just mentioned before, and Cully as well has come up a few times. So, yeah, when you got those 3 guys against, the other pods, which were all, solid other than Dacos, he was always going to be in trouble. And as you said, Brad's team's been very, very strong. So he's going to be, it's going to be a very interesting matchup this week, which we'll get to soon.
Yes, it will, Rabs. He's certainly one of the 4 teams of the comp. Slid into 8th, and we mentioned last week likely to do some damage. And he started his damage. So hopefully for him, that's where it stops for other coaches. But he's rolling beautifully. So.
No, he sure is. We love that from Brad. And very quickly, the consolidation finals, boys. Phenomenal one. Team GC just won, the Keys won, and Smith's Cripps both also winning. So our predictions once again of a phenomenal and Smith's Cripps grand final in the consolidation finals.
Do you not want to talk about our matchup, Scotty?
Oh, shit. I skipped ahead. Sorry, mate.
No, it's fine. I'm happy not to talk about it.
Really quickly then, just Himmelberg and McRae, really, for you, Rabs. Everyone else was very good.
Yeah, very solid pods, I think, on your side, Scott. Probably I had the reverse situation, Ben, to what you were talking about of both of us having Merritt as captain. So I pulled the trigger on Miller a couple of minutes before the Gold Coast game, which, yeah. I mean, we spoke about it earlier. I think, Scott, we sent a message halfway through the Essendon North game. You were in front by 19 points, and it was Goldstein versus Merritt, and Goldstein had outscored Merritt by 9 points in the first half. So we're looking at a very tight game, and I've lost by over 100, which is quite unusual. So, just your boys are way too solid. And, it wasn't obviously Marshall coming in for me was great, but, still a few guys who weren't able to get it done. And as you said, McRae and Himmelberg, who've been issues for other people, were so for me. But, massive score for your boys, as we said earlier.
No, thank you, Rabs. A good season from you, mates. Another finals appearance, so that must have been nice.
Yes, it was nice to pump out a half-decent score, given some of the commentary around my low scoring throughout the season, which has been noted. Some of that commentary has been from me too, so I'm not going to sniper those people. But, it was nice to put out a good score. But, short, obviously, in the end.
Very good. And, well, I've already discussed the consolidation final, so we'll move on to this week's matchups, and let's just roll on. Bear with me a couple of seconds there, folks. Let's talk about the Guns N' Roses up against the Burp and Burt Burtons. Ben, what are you thinking this week? Brad, obviously with a very strong side and some interesting pods.
Yeah, there is a few at this time of year, which is a little bit rare. The one that's obviously screaming out as like Dogs Balls as a unique is Mr. Laird at home, which looms ominously. But it should be really close. Obviously, a couple of Collingwood boys there for having some favourable matchups. And then the Giants really. So Canelio Taranto versus Himmelberg Kelly. That'll be a good matchup on Saturday, and hopefully for me, Himmelberg's a full forward. That'd be lovely. So, but no, he's got a little bit of cash in the bank from what I've seen, and has won 4 in the trot. So it's going to be a good match, hopefully.
Yeah, I think this is, we can say this for all the matchups, but clearly going to be quite tight. Still quite a few pods, though, considering the time of the season that we're at. So a few things that are going to impact. But there's some really interesting matchups when you go into it. You sort of got the Chris v. Dacos Collingwood saga, which we'll get some answers on very early tomorrow night. Potentially sort of lining up Merritt versus Laird as well. Both very well-performing pods. And then, as you said, there's some question marks around blokes like Taranto. Is he going to perform to what he was doing before last week? You've got Himmelberg on the other side, who's a real question mark. And English is not a pod. He's consistent, but Darcy Cameron as well, who, lots of coaches traded out last week and then he pumped out a 90. So very hard to predict. I feel like I'm just leaning towards your side, Ben, but not with a huge amount of confidence. I think it's going to be very dependent on those guys who have said, even Cripps and Wines as well, guys who can go one way or the other. So very hard to predict this one.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more there, Rabs. It's eight pods, and we'll get into the next matchup as well. There's quite a few there. So I think Friday night will be pivotal with Brad being one of the few coaches not to own Crisp all year. Merritt looms large, especially with recording on a Thursday night helps with teams with Lockie Ash not playing for the Giants. So whether they choose to tag or they've been bleeding points lately, the Giants. So that's a tasty matchup for Merritt, and he's been in such great form. But the Giants Bombers game, and I think Friday night will dictate a lot of this matchup. And then, like you said, Rabs, I think Wines and Cripps. Cripps has been in great form. Carlton pretty much have no midfield apart from him and Sam Walsh, so he'll have plenty to do against Brisbane. And then, Laird obviously is that safety blanket up against West Coast Sunday afternoon. for Brad. So, yeah, it's going to be a really tight game, and I'm interested to see which way both coaches go in terms of captains and vice captains. All right, let's move on to the other semi-final, and it is, my God, your Liberatore up against my boys. And again, a lot of Pods boys. What do you see happening in this matchup?
Yeah, quite a few obviously Pods, similar Pods from what we just discussed in terms of, Cornelio and Himmelberg for Huey. It's going to be, again, Laird looms large as a unique against you there, Scotty, which I'm sure you'll be aware of. It's all going to come down to the trade table, I think, and that captaincy, which we saw last week, play a pivotal role. So, there's a few nerves floating around the Liberatores. There's no doubt about that. Having the franchise in the household as such, but I think it should be high scoring, and even for you, there's Scotty, guys like Rosie and Wines who've come semi good lately against Richmond Saturday night. That could be a few points there. And Took Miller wondering if he gets a Finn McGuinness attention on Saturday afternoon as a unique as well. So I would, really not sure which way this would go. I got a bit of feedback last week that I was backing against the Liberatores, but I think that again. I think the Strongs are priming at the right time.
Yeah, it's a really tough one to predict. I think, if you look at last week, your boys, I think, outscored Hughes' team by about 200 points, Scott. So very easy to back you in based off that. But I think it'll be a lot closer than that. I think, last week, probably blokes like Heaney, Parker, Bruce, Cameron probably maxed as well as they can. So, they have every now and then sort of dropped in scores of 70s and 80s and 90s. So, I think it will be a relatively close game. I think looking at Hughes' side, though, the thing that concerns me is Himmelberg and also that sort of Cully situation, as well as, Coleman coming in. He's had some good form, but probably not the most reliable player. So with that in mind, I think I'll be backing your boys in, Scotty. But, it'll be definitely closer than it was last week. So it'll be a tight matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Hughes been a little bit unlucky the last few weeks. He's had such a great season and just with a few injuries and that sort of thing. But he's got some cash in the bank. So it'll be interesting which way he goes, whether he does another downgrade and then puts that on top of Cully to bring in whoever, or he maybe plays a Carmichael or loops him Friday night, see if he can score something half decent, and then maybe move around that way. But it'll be, really interesting. And the good thing, I guess, coming into this game is those Swans boys up against North Melbourne. And we saw what Essendon did to North Melbourne last week with blokes, my favourite player, Mason Redmond, doing very well. It's going to be a really a tight tussle there, and expecting a really close matchup. Really quickly, let's talk about the consolidation finals. B Sharps versus Team GC. What are we thinking, boys?
Team GC.
Team Mason Redmond.
Team Mason Redmond. Yeah, put the C on him, Zach, or the VC, because he's got a Saturday game. He should. Why not? And then we've got the Glen Menton Fan Club up against the Keys. Interesting matchup. Which way are you going, lads?
I'm going the Glen Mantons without having a look. But Ben Keys, franchise player playing full forward or forward pocket, whatever. That's not great for Jake, so I'll go Sean.
I am having a look, and I'm also going for Sean.
Very good, boys. Well, best of luck to all the coaches out there. Second week of finals, an exciting time, and hopefully there's some more chat in the group. It was nice to see. I had to initiate some of it, but I'm happy to do that again. So good luck all. It's going to be an interesting round. Hopefully no late outs this week. That would be appreciated, but plenty of green dots on the bench for everyone. So good to see Bryn Teakle. Shout out to him coming back in for the power. And on that note, we'll leave it there. Good luck and go well. See ya.